Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 15th regular meeting of Walpole Select Board. It's also tax day for those of you keeping score at home. Let's all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first order of business tonight is we have a continuation of the public hearing that we had last week. At that hearing, we had 4 street acceptances in front of us. We did accept 3, and the 4th one had some outstanding items on it, so we decided to defer that to this week and keep the public hearing open. So I understand the situation that we were looking to get cleared up has been cleared up. I see Carl Baldoff is here. Carl, you want to step up and just tell us where we are with this?
Just in the next time, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Your timing is impeccable, I have to say.
Good evening to members of the board and the chair, Jimmy. Yes, last Thursday, the applicant's contractor, 2 contractors actually came out, and they remedied the situation by essentially raising the driveway apron, repaving it. They fixed a couple of other little things while they were up there on the paving. And we were there, shot grades with a level, made sure this was not guesswork to get this thing in. You want to do it right the second time. So we're satisfied that this has been addressed. Obviously, haven't had a chance to see it in a deluge of rain, but it's up a good 4 inches, which is a good amount. The curb's only 6, the driveway apron's up about 4 inches, maybe a little bit more. So it's not, and the curbs have been adjusted. This situation is remedied.
Okay, and is the resident that was directly affected, they're satisfied with what's been done?
He is. He was present actually when the work was being done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, any questions for Carl from the board?
No.
Jim, anything you want to
No,
add?
I went out myself yesterday, checked it out, took a couple pictures, looks good to me. Carl's satisfied, so I'm satisfied.
Okay. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this? Being none, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Public hearing is now closed. Can I have further motions, Mark?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adopt the order of layout for Bubbling Brook Road from Station 24 plus 05.65 plus or minus to the end at Station 26 plus 54.81 plus or minus.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
I'll make a motion to sign the order of layout documents and plans for Bubbling Brook Road.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
I'll make a motion to have written layout documentation and plans on file with the town clerk's office.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. I also understood, I actually meant to say this before we took the votes, but I don't think it matters, that the planning board can vote to release the bond, whatever they feel they want to vote to release the bond. It doesn't interfere with town meeting and the vote at town meeting.
It does not, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Carl, thank you for following up on that, and thank you for fixing the situation in a short period of time. We appreciate it. Okay,
And thank you for the board's indulgence in this. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, Carl. Okay, next is we have a request for a common vittler's license, Classic Pizza and Subs, LLC, DBA Pizzeria Grande, at 1185 Washington Street. So I understand that Michael Kurtzman is here. Michael, come on up to the podium and just quickly introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me tonight.
Sure.
It's Michael Kritzman. I'm about 6 days into owning Pizzeria Grande, and I'm looking to basically not change the product because I think it's a really good product, but I'm looking to kind of bring everything else into today's, like everything online, kind of updating everything that you can do with it, and also to engage more with the town. So sponsorships for teams, doing things like that I don't think they do a lot of right now. Yeah. And looking to become a contributing member to the community.
Great. Well, we certainly appreciate what you're doing and glad to hear that you're looking to become more involved with the community. That's awesome. Any questions for Michael? Comments? Okay. You've all the paperwork's in order?
Everything's set.
Okay, good. Can I have a motion,
I'll make a
please?
motion to approve the request of Classic Pizza and Subs, LLC for a common victualer's license to operate at 1185 Washington Street.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Great.
Good
You're all
luck.
set. Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Regularly for open forum, let's move to new business. We have a bid contract award. Jim?
Sure. Bid contract number 25-10 Pine Street Culvert Replacement. Recommend favorable action to award that contract to PJ Hayes. PJ is a well-known local contractor here in town. He's done a lot of great work for us. I know Carl and Rick and everyone else is comfortable with the work he's done in the past and the work he's going to do over here at Pine Street. Total bid amount is $508,241.
Questions, Jim? Glenn?
I assume there'll be some road shutdowns, for how long, do you know?
Intermittently, guys, do you want to talk to that one?
So the question was the road shutdown?
Well, you need to shut down Pine Street for any period of time?
Yes, the road will be totally closed for a period of about 4 weeks.
Okay. And you'll work with the town of Sharon and you...
We have coordinated with the town of Sharon and Foxborough as well.
Yeah. This was somewhat of an emergency, sort of unexpected repair, this culvert?
It came up quicker than we had anticipated, yes.
But it's, how long, when is the project gonna be undertaken? When will it start?
This construction season this summer.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Rick. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to award bid contract 2025-10 to PJ Hayes, Inc.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0-0. Let's move on to, I'm going to skip over new business, unfinished business for right now. Let's move to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items as listed on the April 15th agenda.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 5-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th and April 8th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Jim, you want to do the
Yeah,
town
just a
administrator's
few
update?
items. So town meeting, obviously, that's kind of an ongoing one with my updates. We're good to go with everything. Motions are done now the select board's taken the action on Article 9. And I don't believe there's going to be a need for the select board to meet before town meeting. If something comes up, we can always post it, and Liz can give us a room or whatever. And FinCom public hearing is set to take place this Thursday. Again, all their actions are covered, so they'll just have the public hearing, probably accept some minutes and move on. And the last item up is, as we start to close out the year, the end of the fiscal year, we're keeping an eye on all the budgets. Nothing's really jumping out at this point, but things can come up over the next 2.5 months. And we're actually already starting to prepare for the fall town meeting. And Aoife and I have started a warrant, just kind of with the boilerplate articles on there. And Patrick's just about ready to send out his capital request so the department heads can start to prepare. So we're already on to that.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Jim? Okay, I've got 7:10 on the clock. Anyone here for open forum? Okay, they're being done. We'll go back up to unfinished business, the Bird Pond Dam discussion. So tee up on this one. This is a discussion I'm going to have among the board members tonight. We've had, in the last, 14, 15 months, we've had many, many meetings with DCR. We've had meetings with the public. We've had meetings with the department heads. And we've collected a lot of information. We most recently sent a raft of additional questions off to DCR, which they turned around very quickly and covered with Glenn and I in a Zoom meeting on yesterday. We'll post those answers out to the website like we have done on the other answers that we've gotten, so all the materials will be out there. What we want to do tonight is start a discussion among the board members where we start to actually talk about, options ahead of us and any residual questions that we have. We, as I said last week, are looking to take a vote on a recommendation on May 13th, which is about a month from now. So we want to have discussion tonight and make sure that if there are any outstanding questions, that those outstanding questions get unearthed so that we can, spend the next 4 weeks getting quality answers to those so that we can have a final discussion and debate and vote on May 13th. So the intent tonight is not to take positions or take votes. It's about discussion. It's about sharing ideas. It's about giving, an opportunity for us to ask additional questions and make sure that we're ready for that vote on May 13th. Okay? So who would like to start? Ben.
All right, so I guess referencing, you know, to some extent, the latest correspondence that we had with the state, and we had sent them a couple of additional questions after our last discussion, talking about the type of spillway that the state would consider, and some other items about owning the dam and operating the dam, and those types of questions. And I know that Glenn also had some questions in there too that he can speak to. In my mind, it really comes down to a couple of distinct pieces. First and foremost is ownership of the dam. And I think from all that we've discussed and all that we've heard, it seems important that the town not take ownership of the dam for a myriad of reasons, you know, that we've talked about over the last three or four meetings. And so I think in light of trying to, you know, formulate a organized, you know, statement to the DCR about it, to me, that would be the first bullet point in that statement to the DCR. For me, the second one is really considering then the spillway, and whether the spillway should be removed completely and allow the pond to become a river, or the spillway is put back in place and it remains a pond. You know, I think the idea here where the DCR had indicated that, you know, they understood that a spillway could be put back and relief gates could be engaged as part of that process, I think is an interesting one. It does ameliorate the flood risk to some extent, and allow for the pond to remain. I'd be very interested in holding additional discussions with the DCR on that, how they see that moving forward. You know, currently DCR operates the dam. If they would be willing to continue to operate the dam in that fashion, and really, in a nutshell, all that entails is, you know, when heavy rains are going to come, or in the spring when the snow melts, if we get any snow, it would entail, you know, moving the spillway, or whether it's a fixed spillway or a gate spillway or additional gates, to relieve the pressure on the dam and lower the water in the pond. That's really what we're talking about from an operational standpoint. So I think that's interesting. I'd like to talk with DCR more about that and hear more about that option, which would allow us to keep the pond and also manage the flood risk. And then, you know, at that point, if we're keeping the spillway and the pond is staying, all these ancillary questions of land ownership and development, questions of, you know, what contaminants could be in the soil underneath the pond, you know, what happens if the pond leaves and it dries out, or there's you know, odors associated with it, or can we plant plants in it, or how much are the plants going to cost, and all of that really goes away if we're able to put the dam and the spillway back in some form or fashion in agreement with DCR. And that really seems the cleanest to me. And I don't really see how we can break that down any further in terms of, because you just get lost in the sauce. And for the folks that have heard these discussions, it's like, you know, what if somebody decides to develop, or what if, you know, there's a memorandum of understanding with somebody who's in a trust, and then maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and there's a wild amount of variables there. We could just get spinning in circles. And so I really want to make sure that we stay focused, at least in terms of our discussions with the DCR, on what can be done with the dam, because it seems like we have some options there that can allow for the mitigation of risk to the town and others, as well as the pond remaining. And I did appreciate, the last thing I'll say then is some of the notes that the DCR had given to us in relation to that risk, you know, the risk of the dam overtopping, additional flooding downstream from the dam. You know, they really were able to ease some of my concerns there, and I think that we can achieve a moderation of any risk that may remain. So I think that's where I would start.
Thanks, Ben. Glenn?
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that the state has actually given us kind of the ability to make this decision on our own. They've come to us and they have a preference of that they've declared as removing the spillway is what they want us to do. and they said they would not retain ownership unless that was the option that we chose. But it is the select board's decision. So that's interesting to me. What's also sort of interesting to me is I'm in a unique position where I'm advocating sort of on behalf of the community and the neighborhood who have expressed a clear preference for retaining the pond and repairing this, and not removing the spillway and repairing the spillway. So I'm advocating for that, but at the same time, I need to advocate for what happens if the spillway does get removed. I need to make sure, and that's where a lot of my questions was focused on, because if we keep the pond, most of my questions are irrelevant, but if we don't keep the pond, if we remove the spillway, then my questions take on more importance. And so I want to just kind of review my questions real quick, because I did have that meeting. We had that Zoom meeting. These questions will be posted, but I want to just review them briefly. So my first question was, since the town and the state do not own or control the land under the pond, which would go away in under one scenario, is the state confident that it can perform the necessary work on private land? And then Mass DCR is saying they have provided an update to Wall Street Development, which is potentially going to be a future owner of the land, about the land rights that DCR would need to acquire to construct either of the alternatives, which will likely include temporary construction easements. So we talked about that. You were at the meeting, Jim. And I don't know if you're confident, I mean, when you speak, maybe you can speak to this, if you're comfortable with their answer, but they did say that this project will not move forward unless they have all the construction easements. Because that was my concern. Well, if you can repair the dam or remove the spillway or whatever you do, but you can't finish the project, then why even start it? And they actually said that they wouldn't, and that was my concern. So I feel like they addressed that likely scenario, and you can talk to your thoughts as well. I mentioned the recreational easement that is currently on the land, and I just want to call attention to that. There already is a NEPA, Neponset River Watershed Association, has a recreational easement, so whether or not we get construction easements, we have a recreational easement, so we have rights to recreational use of that land, whether it's privately owned or not. So I want to call attention to that. And then I talked about what it looks like at the end if it does get drained, and they talked about plantings. They spoke about saplings and shrubs and herbaceous plants, and my concern to them was, well, how good of a job are you going to do? Is it going to be sort of a halfway done job, or is it going to be, and the word that I chose was comprehensive, and they liked that word, and they said they've done these in the past, and comprehensive is what they're going for. So I have to take them for their word, and I think they'll do a good job. And my last question to them was, will the state consider purchasing the private land so that they can control its future use? And they had a one-word answer, which was no. So, all right, that's it for me.
Thank you, Glenn. Anyone else?
Mark,
Go ahead, no, go ahead, you can jump in.
I'm going along the lines where Ben and Glenn are going as well. The dam, and obviously the safety of the dam and the condition of the dam, and that we are, in this position is of great importance. Right now, there's a lot of unknown answers. If we, like as has been alluded to, going down the rabbit hole, that if we remove the spillway and it went down to a river, there's a lot of what ifs, and there's a lot of unanswered questions there, and that does make me very nervous, because without those answers, yes, we're not going to move forward, but right now I would like to see the dam be improved and have the better gate system to control flooding, which would allow us to keep the pond as is. I think that the next part that is difficult is the ownership of the dam, and DCR pretty much stating that if we went with that option, the town would have to take ownership of it. And that's very challenging, because again, this is an abandoned dam with an owner that is unknown, and it is really not the position that the select board wants to be in the beginning. But here we are, and we have to make some decisions on this. It's kind of where I'm leading.
Thanks. Mark?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. It's interesting in some of the answers that they gave us. So they, again, reminded us that the dam is currently in poor condition. And they also reiterated that they intend to remove approximately 18 inches of the existing spillway boards by the end of April 2025. So they are still concerned that not only is it in poor condition, but they want to lower it before the spring rains really get going. So that's sort of a big red flag to me. Like, they know it's a big problem. I also understand that they would like, if we keep the spillway in any form, they do want the town to own it. But I would make the argument that they own it right now, the state owns it right now, or they're responsible, which is the same as ownership in this case. So I think we should be prepared to tell them what we're willing to do and not let them, through their letter, even though they said they don't want to own it. Well, nobody really wants to own an old decrepit dam. So I guess I'm still on the path of I don't want the town to own the dam. I think there's too much risk, literally downstream, for the town to do that. It occurs, granted, if they rebuild the dam, we don't have a lot of liability for some period of time. Maybe it's 40 years, maybe it's 50 years, but at some point, the town will be on the hook for a big repair job. And I don't want to set the town up for something big down the road. I am intrigued with sort of what people have already mentioned, which is it would be nice if we could control the spillway in any form. It had a controllable spillway in the olden days. That's probably the way to go. Or maybe it's sort of you lower the spillway, but you don't eliminate it. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the pond after the end of April. Like, when it goes down 18 inches, what does that really mean? Does it still look like a pond? Is it still viable? Can you still walk around it and it would be nice? All those kind of things. So I do intend to go over there once the spillway is down and see how it looks. But I'm sort of still in the mode that I was back in November of I don't want the town to own the dam. And I'd be open to a spillway that could be controlled to help minimize flood damage down the road. And H&V was interesting last week. So as long as the dam doesn't fail, they're okay with whatever we decide. But they did reiterate last week when we met, if the dam fails, our Washington Street Bridge is in trouble, and H&V is in trouble if it happens quickly. If there's a big hurricane coming up the coast, they can lower their water level. Maybe we can lower the water level more and try to minimize that risk. But the dam is not in good shape, and it is nice that the state is going to take responsibility and get it repaired. So I think that's a good thing.
So, I've said this all the way along, it's a hard decision, and one that is going to require us to be very thoughtful and planful. I think we have been. I think we've taken our time on this. I think we have done a tremendous amount of due diligence on it. In the meeting that we had on Monday, and it was the same group of people from DCR that we have had multiple meetings with, and they continue to be very helpful, transparent, clear. One of the things we talked about that really helped me a lot yesterday was this notion of controlling the spillway. Mark, I think all of us have referenced it. We've been talking about keeping the spillway in place and putting floodgates, control gates, are the words we've been using. And they won't do that. And they've said we're not going to do that. But they did say yesterday that they may not have been completely clear with us that in the maintain the spillway option, that there would be a mechanism to lower the river. And Ben, as you pointed out, that's the way it was originally designed, and that mechanism no longer functions. They have to just physically take the boards out now, which is what they're going to do by the end of the month. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, and I'll come back on that in a minute. But what they described, and we spent a fair amount of time talking about this yesterday, and I wanted to just lay that out a little bit. They talked about this mechanism that's a rather large manual mechanism with a wheel. So turn a wheel, and it raises and lowers the mechanism so that more or less water can go over the top and enter into the downstream. And they described it as being made of very heavy, non-corrosive materials, alloys of various kinds. I won't get the words right, and I won't try. But they said these are very heavy-duty mechanisms that will last many, many decades. and that the operation of them is not difficult or onerous. You have to turn a wheel. And that the maintenance of it was that you would have to grease it from time to time. And I said, so talk about, what's that like? And it says it like, a grease nipple on, a tractor that you pump the grease into. And I said, that's exactly what it is. So they claimed that it wasn't terribly onerous in terms of the maintenance of the mechanism itself. I asked them how much the mechanism costs, because that's an interesting question as we look 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years down the road. And are we saddling the town with a large cost? We'll hold the risk question for a second. And the mechanism today costs, they said, in the range of $60,000, which surprised me, number one. I thought it would be a lot more than that. I think that's the mechanism. You've got the cost to install it, so it's probably multiples of that, but it's not $1 million. And so when I heard that, I thought, well, that's interesting. It's not as expensive as I would have thought that we would have to. It didn't sound like it was terribly difficult to operate. It would require a procedure, and it would require people paying attention to that procedure, because you can't wait until you're in the 500-year flood to start letting the water go, right? You've got to be ahead of it. It's also useful, though, and if you go back to some of the things that what Landis was talking about, the invasive plants and all that, one of the things that we do across all of our ponds in Walpole and everywhere, I guess, is they lower the level of the pond during the early frost part of the season in the winter. And part of the reason for that is to kill off the plants that are growing in the, around the edges of the pond. And so it would be useful to be able to do that as well. So if I think about the things Landis was concerned about around invasive plant species, perhaps, I'm no expert in it, but perhaps that would be helpful in that regard as well, because it'll let the frost get at those plants and theoretically kill them off. So the more that they talked about that option, and the reason I'm spending a fair amount of time on it right now is I want everyone to get the point that we talked about this for a while. And this was, I would say it was new news to me, but it certainly crystallized for me, how that leave the spillway intact thing might still work. So my question to them at that point was, so does that mean that if we kept the spillway intact, and remember, they haven't designed this yet, so some of this is speculative, but assuming that they designed it with the intent of maintaining the level of the pond somewhere where it is now, the question I had was, would the mechanism allow us from time to time to let the thing fill up to the level that it's at? And the answer was yes. You could also take it down. So much like by the end of this month, they're going to remove 18 inches of boards, I guess, from the dam to lessen the level of the pond, because it is in fact actively leaking on the Hogan side of the dam. And DCR came up during one of our big recent storms and observed it leaking. So DCR has done all the right things. They've gone through, I think they said through our Conservation Commission, and they've gone through whatever approvals they need to do, and they have access, because it was another question we asked. And they have said they can take the boards out, reduce the pond by about 18 inches, and they believe that'll alleviate the leakage that they're seeing, which, and I forget who said it, but which then, in my mind, starts to take down the risk of, something terrible happening and having impacts downstream. That's not unlike what this wheel mechanism would do. It would allow you to say from time to time, okay, take it down or let it come back up. So all of that was really interesting to me. Let's talk about the risk a little bit here, because this is another area where we spent some time talking about overtopping of the dam. Because we know in the 500-year flood scenario, there's still overtopping of the dam. And this is pretty much under any scenario. So they're like, yeah, if you return it to a river, or if you have the spillway in and you've reduced the level of the pond, when the 500-year flood happens, you are still probably going to have overtopping of the dam. And that really won't be the worst of the problem, because if you think about the flooding that will have happened behind the dam, and into the area there and downstream of the dam, backing up off the Hollingworth and Vos part, they said, in truth, you're going to be in ride-it-out mode regardless of which choice you pick. I've been very worried about the so-called 500-year flood, which, doesn't happen very often, sort of the name gives you that sense. But it can and will happen. And so their point to us was, you're probably going to be in ride-it-out mode anyway. So the more I think about this, and then I start getting my head into, it's a lovely area, it's a historic thing, we've got the conservation aspects to it, we've got the trails thing, Glenn, that you've been involved with. We've got a lot of very interesting things going on in that area, and for anybody who's ever walked through, there is a beautiful area. I became more interested in pursuing this question of leave the spillway in place with that control mechanism that they described. So the question, a long-winded, speech there to get to the question that I would like to hear assessed in the next 4 weeks. I'd really like to have the people who are going to have to operate this thing explain what it really means. So there is this emergency action plan that will be developed as part of this. I guess we have one today. There is an operations manual that will be developed as part of this. What I'm interested in figuring out is, for the people, and you're in the room here, who are going to be operating this thing, or the people who are in your slots down the road who are going to operate it, what does it really mean? So it all sounds good to me to say, fix the dam, fix the spillway, put the control gate in place, maintain the pond. You get all those added benefits that we talked about, and frankly, I've gotten more comfortable with the risk, given that we're being ride-it-out mode anyway on the 500-year flood. What I'm not completely comfortable with is what really is involved to operate it and maintain it. So I'm thinking things like, okay, every year it's going to have to be inspected, and that inspection may unearth some things that need to be fixed, addressed in some fashion, even though it's intended to be built for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, whatever it will be. So I'd be interested in knowing what that inspection and maintenance routine looks like and what that's likely to cost us. I'd like to think about, and they said, by the way, you will very infrequently adjust those gates. They said you won't do it. It's not like every weekend you're up there putting them up and taking them down. You won't do that. But there will be times when we will want to do that, and perhaps it's as part of our maintenance of the pond in the fall, or perhaps it's because we get high water levels and potential flood conditions. What I'd like to hear is more about, what does that operation process look like? Who would have to be involved in it? How difficult is it? How expensive is it? And then there's sort of the maintenance of the dam itself, because we still have to mow it, clear it, and all that kind of stuff. I'd just be interested in hearing more about what that's likely to entail, so that we really know, if we were to go down this path, what would it really cost us? Money, people, process, what would it really cost us? And is there something additional we would have to be thinking about, much like we set up a capital stabilization fund? Would we be thinking we need to set up some kind of I'll call it the dam stabilization fund, we'll probably call it the dam stabilization fund down the road. But do we need something like that? So these are all thoughts that are in my head, and that's my big question. Is, I think to take the spillway out question is a simple one. The river, you get the river. They're going to do what they're going to do, Glenn, in terms of the plantings and all that, but we won't be maintaining that. There is the dam maintenance, but it sounds like that's very minimal. Mowing is basically keeping the trees out of the dam, that kind of thing. And there's no need to, the flow is the flow, so there's no need to adjust up or down gates or any of that kind of stuff. So that one feels fairly simple to me. I'm not so sure about how hard or simple the other option is. So let me pause there and see if, first of all, does anybody have anything based on what I've just said, that they would add to my question. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you had a good question, yeah. About the whole maintenance of it, how,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
what's the operating manual look like, all those kind of things.
And maybe the way we get at that is, they've done a bunch of these. Maybe we just need to reach out to other towns that have done a repair the spillway, put the thing in, and ask them, you know, what really is involved? I mean,
I think at that fall meeting too, there was 2 different towns and 2 different examples. I can't
Yeah.
recall off the top of my head. I feel
Yeah.
like one was heading towards the Cape. One was a removal of spillway, and one was a community that kept the dam.
Pittsfield removed it, and I forget
Yeah.
the other one, but yeah.
I don't re-
Lancaster, maybe, I forget, we can find out. Yeah.
I'm sure we can find somebody who does this and who could explain it to us so that we're not making it up ourselves. But that's really what I would like to understand between now and May 13th. If I thought that it was going to be relatively straightforward to maintain it and not be a huge cost to the town, then the question, I'm going to come back now to the risk, because risk has been one of my big concerns. And the question of, you know, the risk to the dam in the big flood. And I've already said, based on the discussion we had with DCR yesterday, overtopping is going to happen. They're going to design it so it handles the overtopping as best they can. But we're going to be basically in ride-it-out mode in the 500-year flood. So I think I can get somewhat comfortable with that. If I project ahead 60, 70, 80 years, and the people that are in these seats or similar seats have this question about, okay, now the mechanism now needs to be replaced or, you know, has some significant enhancement done to it, the option to take the thing out and return it to a river will exist then as well. So if it's at that point, you know, $1 billion to repair the dam and the town decides they're not able to afford that, then taking the mechanism out will still be an option and you return it to a river at that point. So I don't think we give anything up by going down this path, as long as we're comfortable with the risk and the cost of operating now and in the future. Make sense?
Yep.
That last point was a good one.
I think so.
So what else, let me talk about ownership for just a second, because I do think this is an important aspect of this. And, you know, my going in thing was, we own 4 dams. Is it 4 dams we own, Jim? I think it's 4.
5, God's saying 5.
We own 5 dams. I don't really feel like owning another one. That's been my view all the way along. It's what I've said publicly. This one may be a little bit different the more I've thought about it, and I'm glad we've taken 14 months to get here. The more I've thought about it, maybe the more I think, you know what, this one may actually be worth it. Again, I want to hear my question answered, but this one might be worth it. So, so that's kind of where I'm coming down on it. With respect to ownership, I will tell you this. We don't own it now. Mark makes, I think it was Mark, made a good point that the state de facto owns it right now because they're operating it. I know they have said in a keep the spillway option, we won't own it. They actually declared that the other day, which I don't think to this point they had actually declared, but they declared it the other day. I think we should still talk about it. If we end up owning it, then we end up owning it. I think we should still talk about it with them and say, you know, is there a way to do ownership or joint ownership or something like that? Again, thinking about a long-term capital issue here. So I think as we work our way through this, I don't know that we just accept at face value the no, we're not going to own it thing. Although I think they say that and mean it, and I think they, you know, have good rationale for not wanting to own it, just like we do. But I think we could have some more conversation on that. We may end up owning it if we go down this path, and that's something we'll have to consider. I'm not as opposed to that as I was 14 months ago. What else?
I mean, I understand your instinct to not want to own the dam, but keeping in mind that we own 5 other dams and none of them are brand new. This will be a brand new dam that will be, you know, will have, a 50-year lifespan. I think it's probably longer than that, but who am I to say? But 100-year lifespan. So, you know, and I think you talked quite a bit about the limited maintenance aspect to owning a dam, 2-year inspections, greasing, a movable part here and there, possibly lowering the level from time to time based on, projected weather events. So, yeah, I think this one might be different, and certainly in my eyes, and sounds like you're open to that possibility. So.
I'm certainly open to it. Again, I do want to hear the answer to my question, and that's going to weigh heavily into how I come down on this, but I am open to it for sure. Any other questions that what I don't want to do is get to May 13th and then suddenly say, oh, gee, we didn't think of this or didn't think of that. So, and of course, not raising the question here doesn't mean that it can't be raised between now and May 13th. It just wouldn't be in this session. So I'm just, want to push on that a little bit more. Is there anything else on all the things we've talked about? We've gotten all these documents from them. We have all these questions. We've had all these meetings. Is there anything more in anyone's mind that, we haven't talked about that we really should, so that we're well prepared for, to take a vote on May 13th?
So I would just say, if there's a town nearby, and there may be one that's done this with the state, had the state rebuild the dam, and they've taken over maintenance and control. If they're nearby, I'd love to go visit it. Go take a look at the dam, talk to the people that are there. Maybe some of our people want to go over as well and just say, it's one thing for the state to tell us it's really easy, but
Yeah.
I'd really love to talk to somebody who has to maintain it and tells us what they really think.
Yeah,
So
I agree, and talk's cheap, and, but they also, in my mind, just to be fair, they don't have, they don't really care which way we go.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they're trying to push us in one direction or the other. Anybody else?
No, I would be in agreement. I think as we've continued to discuss this for, months, I'm more comfortable with this concept moving forward of keeping the spillway, having some sort of gate mechanism to control it, and repairing what wouldn't, a brand new dam and having that option. I think a lot of those unknown questions, if we're really pursuing this path, become a moot point.
I agree.
So I have a couple of
Sure,
questions.
yeah.
And I need some direction from you guys.
Yeah.
So the sense I'm getting from the board, I want to make sure I'm clear. You want to keep the pond. That's where you're leaning towards right now.
I think that's fair.
Everyone? Yeah, okay. Jim, between now and, the next month, get some costs, get as much together as I can, as we can. Cost to maintain it, today's dollars, not 50 years from now, and whatever. I took a bunch of notes, so that's basically what you want.
And process too. So it's cost, but it's also process, because we don't do this today. This would be a new thing that we now have to think about. And so I want to make sure that we understand what does the process, and that's where it would be really helpful to talk to another town that is doing it today. What do you guys actually do day in and day out, when it comes to this dam, and how much energy do you put into it? And what does that process look like? Step A, B, C, D, E, F, G. These are the things we have to do, and under these circumstances. And just make sure we're not missing some major thing here that says, oh, wow, we never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay?
As always, a lot of my concern has to do with money.
Yep.
This year, we had to make a lot of tough choices, so much so the school was, $1.2 million short. We agreed to come up with $650. The town made sacrifices. We cut the arborist position. We cut things in the police department, fire department. We couldn't keep our resources, our financial resources, weren't able to meet the needs of each of these departments. I know that you guys know this. You all have been on the board for some time. I don't know if you'll need to make the decision now. No, you won't need to make it now, but a future board's going to need to say, okay, we made this commitment on this dam. DPW can't have, we need to eliminate these positions because we can't not do, you know this, I'm just saying it for record.
That's why I want to know what the ongoing costs look like. Because if you told me they were $1 million a year, then that's a big number.
Yeah.
And that's a number we would have to figure out, how do you fund that if we went down that path. If you told me it was $75,000 a year, that's a whole different ballgame.
And my point, we have the 66-34 split.
Yep.
I do not expect the school department to say, yes, we will, let's take that as part of the discretionary funds off the top before we do the 66. I don't see them telling us that when
I agree.
So we're probably gonna have to make some decisions on our levels before the budget, and this is, again, 5, 10 years down the road. I'm just advocating for the departments in place now because we're already making these tough cuts. We made them this year. We were forced to make them to commit a balanced budget. And it's, we're going to have other things come free up down the road, but just making my case. Yeah.
As always, you're doing what you're supposed to do, Jim. And just to remind us that there is a real cost to this, and the cost will involve trade-offs. So, but all the more reason that I need to know the answer to
Yeah.
my question. Okay?
We'll do our best to get as much
as we
information.
can.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to say before we wrap it up? All right, again, if there are any questions that you think of, let's get them as quickly as possible to Jim so that we can, follow them up and be ready to take a vote on May 13th.
Yeah, emphasis maybe on that point, like I think maybe the questions need to happen, and it's okay to have questions outside of a public meeting. You can,
Sure.
make a phone call to the
Yeah.
Office of Dam Safety, and they will more than
Yeah.
happy take that call.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do also just want to reiterate the point that was made earlier, but I want to call it out specifically, that DCR has made the decision to lower the pond level by the end of April. And so for the residents that are around the pond, you will notice that. It is going to be interesting to see what happens. Their goal is to take the pond down 18 inches. It's probably 18 inches. And it will be interesting to see how that translates then into, where the water is, or the water's edge is, particularly upstream as it's more shallow. So we'll be watching that, but just so everyone's aware that that's happening, and so no one's surprised. I think we did ask them to send out notifications to abutters, right?
I think we
Yeah,
did.
they mentioned that they were going to do that.
And they were going to do that. So that is going to happen. Landis, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say it was included in the emergency certificate that was issued by the conservation.
Okay.
Got the butters adjacent to the pond,
Landis just said is that the notification of butters was included in the emergency certification that the Concom gave DCR. So they will be doing that.
The more I'm thinking through this, and I had a feeling the board may go this direction, if we do own, if eventually that's what May 13th, the board decides, let's keep the pond, do whatever we can with the spillway and all that, there is a whole process where this is going to take years to go through this thing. And, I would advocate, one, for them to own the dam afterwards. They've made it clear they don't want to. I think we should fight as long as we can on that one. But something I would ask for them, if they're going to make us own it at the end, I would like, really, if we have to settle for that, them to do the whole process of taking up the land and everything, because they can do it a whole lot easier at the state level than we can, because like Mark said, no one owns it now. It's been sitting in tax title. Lisa has never taken it, because once you take it, I'd rather them go forward with that process, and then at the end, whatever agreement we have, because eventually we're going to have to have an agreement with them with outlines, all these terms and conditions of maintenance. They take it, and then the town, if that's what you do, if you want to do, will take ownership after the fact. But I'd like them to do their resources, to tie up their resources.
So what I think you should be thinking about, because I agree with that, and I
Yeah.
suspect the rest of the board does as well, we should start thinking about what words do we need to put on paper following whatever vote we take on May 13th. Be thinking about what are the things that we need to be saying to them that we want. And that's something that the whole board should be thinking about is, we'll pick option A, option B on the 13th. With that decision, what are those critical points that we need to make sure we put into the recommendation so that we're absolutely clear? And Jim, that would be certainly one of them, okay? The other thing that they wanted us to reiterate tonight was that this is really the beginning of the process, not the end of it. So we'll take a vote on May 13th, we'll say A or B, and they will then start to design to whatever we tell them, A or B. And they will be coming to us frequently. They didn't say how frequent, but they will be before us on frequent occasions to discuss things that they feel we need to be part of in terms of the decision-making that goes into the design. So this is gonna go on, for quite a long time. I suspect that design itself is gonna take, 12, 18, 24 months to complete. before any work gets done. And there's a lot of other things that have to happen on permitting and, access and all those things that would have to happen, whether it's A or B. And so there's much more discussion that needs to take place here, as we go past May 13th. So everyone should just be aware of that. This doesn't fall off the radar anytime soon. All right, last call for comments. Okay, Jim, anything else?
No.
Okay. I want to thank, I meant to say this, so department heads, you guys put a lot of work into this, a lot of thought into it. You came here, as we asked last week, and told us what you thought. Some of what we're talking about here may run a little counter to, what you told us last week. I just want to make sure you understand how much we appreciate the thought process that you put into this, the work you put into it, and just, ask you to now, as we get to whether it's A or B, let's just keep on doing our best work on this, because this is an important decision for the town. Okay, I think we're done. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0, we're now adjourned. Thank you and good night.